We have an off-chain valuation mechanism that we've been working. It's kind of in-house oracle that we've developed specifically for NFTs because NFT valuation is not an easy task. What happens is when you bring an NFT, we will give you a value, a preliminary value. And if you, as the NFT owner, accept it, then that's it. You basically accept it. The price is written on chain, and immediately you have access to credit based on the valuation and the LTV that we set.
What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. My name is Fareed. As a part of today's video, I'm going to be sitting down with Dennis and Simon to get a catch-up and a brief update surrounding everything related to Paribus. If it's your first time hearing about Paribus, they're a lending and borrowing protocol focusing on LP tokens, synthetic assets, as well as NFTs. Now, they've just launched their governance platform. We've just also received their NFT Lending and Borrowing Testnet. And I want to talk about their 2024 roadmap as well. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring up their founder, Dennis, and then we're also going to introduce Simon. So Dennis, welcome aboard. How are you?
Hey, Farid, it's good to be here. I'm good. Busy times, but overall good.
Thank you for your time here first and foremost, and I can definitely probably confirm that you're very busy, right? You guys have just launched so many things in the past 2 months, and I'm excited to see what Paribus has coming down the road for 2024. Next, we've got Simon. Welcome aboard. Good morning. How are you?
Hey man, how are you doing? Pleasure to be here. Excited to talk a bit more about Paribus.
Thank you both for sharing your time with me. So let's go ahead and just kind of kick things off. For anybody who's hearing about Paribus for the very first time, can either one of you give us the quick rundown as to what Paribus is and some of the solutions that it solves here within the blockchain and crypto space?
Sure. So Paribus is a cross-chain borrowing lending platform. It supports conventional assets as we see in typical DeFi platforms, but our USPs lie in the fact that we support a wide range of collaterals and we keep extending that array of collaterals that we support. Our overall goal is to unlock liquidity across the space. So you have people that are stuck in NFT positions or that don't want to sell an NFT, or they have LP positions they earn the yield from. How can they leverage that liquidity even further without coming out of that position? And the answer to that question is Paribus.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We've definitely seen the rise of more and more lending and borrowing protocols focusing on assets that are not as easy to sell in order to allow the community, specifically, in Cardano, to tap into the ADA that their assets hold in order to be able to utilize that in different DeFi protocols in order to maximize their yield and their gain. So I can definitely see where Paribus is coming from. But as you mentioned, Paribus has a much broader vision in the sense that you guys are aiming to be blockchain agnostic with a platform already live on the Arbitrum network. Now, just this past month, we saw governance hit the testnet and now go live on the mainnet. Can you guys explain the importance of governance and how you guys see this, being used, or how you guys see this playing a role in the future of Paribus?
Yeah. So governance is a key milestone. Not in the fact that we allow people to vote and participate in sort of directing the platform, but overall as a business and as our vision has always been to hand over the platform to our token holders. Effectively, if you're a token holder, you believe in the project, so you should have the say on which way the platform goes. So it's a key milestone that we've achieved and we're really proud of. And we believe it opens a lot of doors for us because most of the time when you speak to other companies or try to partnership with other companies or even exchanges, sometimes one of the first questions they ask is it a centralized team that handles everything? Now we can actually say, no, it's not a centralized team. There is a whole governance. There is a whole community behind this project, and you can see on chain. So it allows us to leverage that and sort of have this discussion in conversations where we can push Paribus to that next stage that we really want to see it go.
Thank you for that, Simon. I maybe turn it over to, thank you for that, Dennis. I maybe want to turn it over to Simon to kind of elaborate from a more technical standpoint. How does governance work for anybody who's just kind of on the sidelines, wants to join the Paribus community? What do they need to do in order to actually utilize the governance platform and to make sure that their voice is actually heard?
Sure, let me run them through. So yeah, first of all, most of you guys most likely have Paribus either on Ethereum or on Cardano. So step one, you would need to bridge over your PBX to Arbitrum. Then we have a governance UI under governance.paribus.io, where you can see active proposals and past proposals. Once a proposal is active and can be voted on, you guys will be able to see it there, cast your vote for yes and no, and depending on the outcome of that proposal, we either interact and implement or we don't. As a general rule of thumb, this doesn't only necessarily need to be general business decision. The governance also holds ownership of our smart contracts on chain. So actions and proposals that are defined there can actually directly interact with our smart contracts and change different parameters, which like updating, for example, the jump rate model, which then in return increase the borrow and lending API. Certain things like this. So stay tuned. We are going to showcase some of the proposal relatively soon, as well as deploying a new market relatively soon through the governance. So yeah, I hope everyone will participate and vote for it.
Thank you. And before we actually went live here, you guys were chatting about an ongoing or an upcoming proposal to update some of the markets. Is this typical in terms of what we're going to see with proposals? Are there maybe just even other aspects surrounding other parameters related to Paribus that the community can also pitch proposals about? What are the limitations when it comes to what can actually be proposed and how the community goes about proposing things?
Yeah, so the current proposal that Simon is literally working on right now is the arbitrum market. We think there's a bit of a discrepancy between supply and borrower APRs. So we are proposing to adjust interest rate parameters on that specific market. So you will see the proposal, you'll see the details. There's a simulation run of what we can expect the rates to be at different utilization rates. This is typical in terms of changing an existing market, so changing the structure of an existing market. But the proposals are not limited to this. So you could raise a proposal to add a completely new market. So let's say you want us to support a new form of collateral, you can raise a proposal for that. If you want us to change certain aspects of the platform, like maybe the reserve factor, which is like a insurance fund for each market. Currently, it's set at 20% by default. Then maybe you could raise a proposal for that, and so on. But these are more technical, so you actually have to understand how the platform works and how the algorithm underneath the platform works to be able to sort of operate and raise a proposal. We do have plans to add some sort of a LLM onto our governance. So the LLM will read our smart contracts, for example, it will read our documentation. It will have enough knowledge to understand how to kind of direct you and guide you. And the ideal place that we want to be is you would speak to the LLM and say, I think on Paribus, the ETH collateral supply and borrow rate there's too much of a wide discrepancy. What do you propose? Can you write up a proposal for me? An LLM, which is basically AI, will just basically create this proposal. You have to review it, and then you can just basically click a few buttons to raise the proposal without having to dive deep into the Solidity code and how all that works, because AI just kind of abstracts that away from that complexity for you. That's another thing that we want to do, because we want to involve as many people in governance as possible, and the only way to do that is simplify governance. But apart from those actions, you could actually raise proposal for marketing. So if you have a great idea on how to market something, on how to market the protocol, maybe you raise a proposal asking for 30 million PBX from the ecosystem funds. If it gets voted in, those PBX will be distributed and the plan will be executed as per proposal. So it's not just limited to technical changes, but it also expand into marketing and business development as well.
Yeah, thank you.
To add to that really quick, sorry, I would say in general for the community, even though Dennis mentioned a lot of this stuff is very technical, you don't need to be technically heavy in order to raise proposals. In general, how the workflow always should be is you make a post about it on our governance forum, you engage with the community, you discuss your ideas there, and there will always be some technical person who then can implement the right parameters in the actions for the proposal, for example. So you don't need to be technically heavy in order to work on the future of Paribus. Another thing to note, which I want to clarify, is that even though on the short term, the idea of like creating a new market might be very interesting and people see a lot of demand for it, we should always keep in mind that we need to add tokens, for example, that have a lot of liquidity. Otherwise, you would put the entire protocol at risk of like losing liquidity or being drained. So just don't blindly, I would say, raise a proposal of adding your favorite token. Keep in mind what the future of Paribus will look if that goes through or not.
I think what you just raised there, Simon, at the very end is a very valid and critical point to keep in mind. Just because you have the power to propose something doesn't always necessarily mean that you have to. And I want to also maybe just kind of touch on what Dennis mentioned, right? Which is the LLM and just the assistance of AI. I think it's easy to figure out or to point out things that need to be improved, but how you go about actually doing that or providing solutions is a whole completely different ballgame, right? So as you mentioned, somebody might notice a gap between, a supply and borrow rate APR, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the solution to come or to somehow make that a little bit more closer to what it should be. And so again, I think it's always good to have the community kind of put these things out there, but I think it's always good for the team as well, right? To when they see these proposals, come out ahead of them and say, hey, we see that this is a potential issue. Here are some potential solutions that you can add to the proposal that kind of aligns to where we can somehow meet in the middle. I guess to that end, any sort of last comments or just highlights you guys want to add with respect to governance before we jump into the lending and borrowing testnet?
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing. So there is going to be, I think, Simon can confirm if it's running or if it's live or not, but there is an incentivization program running on governance or going to run on governance where you would be eligible for additional PBX rewards if you are staking and participating. Just to sort of have a disclaimer, we as Paribus team have staked our own tokens as well, because we want to stake and participate in the governance as well, but we will not be eligible for any of those PBX rewards. So it's only for the community to share amongst themselves.
Simon, anything you want to add to that end? If not, we'll keep the conversation moving.
Oh, let's keep going, I guess.
All right. So the next and probably the most recent update is the release on the testnet for the NFT lending and borrowing. This is actually what brought me to Paribus. I remember right after the bull market, everybody had jumped into NFTs. Everybody was holding NFTs, and we're looking for ways to be able to rent them out. Again, provide some sort of value or get access to the value that the NFTs held that they didn't necessarily have. This key feature is now live on the testnet. Can you guys explain, number one, how it works, and then number two, how the community can get access to this as well?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of access, Simon can dive into that. Yes. In terms of how it works, so we have an off-chain valuation mechanism that we've been working. It's kind of in-house oracle that we've developed specifically for NFTs because NFT valuation is not an easy task. So we have an algorithm and we partnered with other third parties who also value NFTs like NFT Bank and Upshot, the two big names that come to mind immediately. And what happens is when you bring an NFT, we will give you a value, a preliminary value. And if you, as the NFT owner, accept it, then that's it. You basically accept it. The price is written on chain, and immediately you have access to credit based on the valuation and the LTV that we set. The LTVs are going to be low initially because we want to sort of ease the system into it and see how things work out. And then eventually we want to get to an optimal state where we start increasing the LTV further and further. So that's effectively how it works. In terms of liquidations, when something becomes eligible for liquidations, it will still appear on the liquidations page that we have. So you could, as an end user, go in and liquidate if you want, or we will just liquidate based on our integrations with providers that have instant sell features for NFTs that are whitelisted. So certain NFTs certain NFT collections have instant sell features through providers like Magic Eden, the marketplace itself, or SudoSwap, and we will tap into these resources whenever we need to immediately liquidate and kind of close off that loan. So that's effectively how it works at a high level. Of course, there are fine details, but we don't want to go into like technical details at this level. We do watch for prices continuity, so it's not that it's written once and then that's it. We don't watch the price. We do watch the price because we realize value of an NFT fluctuates. So if it fluctuates more than X% within the Y amount of time, then the new value of the NFT will be written to make sure the loan's up to date. So yeah, that's effectively how it works in terms of NFTs. I don't know, Simon, do you want to go into how people can access Testnet?
Yeah, I mean, you can access Testnet under lending.testnet.paribus.io. It's on the Ethereum Sepolia testnet. We actually even provide a faucet for everyone in order to claim test tokens as well as test NFTs under faucet.paribus.io, where you just need to click the magic button and everything will appear in your wallet. And from there, you can test out our NFT lending solution on Testnet.
Thank you. I want to go ahead and just quickly recap. And I've got a question, I think, for Dennis, just surrounding liquidations and the benefit for the person actually performing the liquidation. So as it stands right now, lending and borrowing is live on the testnet. You mentioned the automatic valuations, which I think is a huge proposition that Paribus is providing that a lot of other lending and borrowing protocols are not necessarily doing. A lot of what I see right now are P2P, where I come on the market and I basically put my price out there, and whether or not somebody wants to go ahead and accept that is basically on them. Now, I think that makes it a little bit harder to kind of match make an actual deal, right? Where both parties feel like they're getting a fair deal. Of course, as a lender, you want to make sure that you're not putting out your NFT and receiving less collateral than you believe it's worth, right? And then from a borrower's perspective, you want to make sure that you're not borrowing something at a value that you don't think is fair to you, or that you don't think makes sense in terms of an APR or an amount that you have to pay back. So that I think is huge. With the AI valuations, the automatic valuations, there is some sort of way to automatically and fairly identify the actual value of an NFT. So one question, I know I've talked about this before, would be to maybe hear a little bit more about some of the points that you guys look at in order to be able to identify or come up with the actual value of a particular NFT. Moving along, you also talked about the LTV values, right? So depending on how valuable your NFT is, the protocol then allows for you to dictate how much you can actually borrow against that. And of course, early on, you mentioned that, the risk value or the LTV values would be a little bit lower, just so that people aren't taking out too much risk. Again, I'm sure that also reflects on the protocol as well, making sure that there's not too much risk in the entire protocol there. Now, lastly, I want to make sure that it's also clear for anybody who's utilizing Paribus, right? These loans will be instantaneous. You don't have to wait around for somebody else on the other end to accept. And again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here in any of these statements, Dennis. So my last question is just surrounding liquidations. If I'm coming onto the Paribus platform, you mentioned that you guys have third parties that will be able to assist with that liquidation process. If I'm just a single individual, what's the benefit of me actually performing a liquidation on the Paribus protocol?
Yeah. Okay, so let's start from the top, I guess, in terms of the valuation and data points. So we look at various data points. Some of them include, of course, the floor price, but the floor price cannot be relied on because it could be easily manipulated. We look at TWAP volume. We look at the volume in general over 24 hours, over a week. We look at how many owners there are in an NFT collection, unique owners, that is. We look at what percentage of the collection is listed. And we look at top offers and bids that may be on these NFTs or specific token IDs. These are some of the main data points that we look at. They have more weight than the rest. But basically, when we bring all of this data, then we have a better overview of what the actual value of the NFT is, rather than just relying on, like in other platforms, what we see typically is either floor price or TWAP. That's what they rely on. TWAP is actually way more reliable than floor price, because floor price is it's just high. It's just speculative, right? You could you could put whatever you want, but is somebody actually going to pay for that? Or if somebody has 1,000 ETH, can they push the floor price down or up, vice versa, etc. So TWAP is generally more reliable, but even then, TWAP can be manipulated if somebody really wants to manipulate something. So once you bring all these data points together, it's way harder to manipulate it because you have to spend a lot of money on that specific collection to be able to sort of raise the value or drop the value. So that's kind of the valuation side. We will start writing maybe a few blogs about what exactly we do, the work in the inner workings of the algorithm, how much data we consume from NFT indexes and Upshot, NFT Bank, etc., and what we do with it step by step. The second part is, what was the second question? Sorry, I forgot.
It was about the benefits of the liquidations from a single individual.
Yeah, so because the LTV value is usually set to a lower threshold, that gives us the room, a little bit of room to add discounts to these NFTs. So when you're liquidating, you're actually liquidating and buying back that NFT at a small discount. The discount may be 5%, maybe 10%, but there is still a discount in comparison to what you would buy on OpenSea. So that's the main benefit. If you're looking for an NFT collection and a very specific token, then and this liquidation is up for grabs, then why would you go pay 10% more? Just come here, pay us, and then close the loan. You have the NFT in your wallet. That's the main incentive. Of course, we might introduce incentives with PBX. So if you liquidate, you might get X amount of the value of the liquidation in PBX itself, but that will only kick in if it's necessary. I think discount on its own. If I could buy Pudgy Penguins for 10% of the discount, I will buy it and I will close that loan.
Right. And you could then theoretically take that to the open market and list that, in order to maybe capitalize. Exactly. You mentioned a very good point there at the very end, some sort of a PBX kickback. That would be huge. Again, I'm not sure how serious you guys are about doing that, but if you guys are not only providing the discount, but then also even providing a kickback in PBX, I don't see liquidations being up on the platform for very long when you're able to earn in multiple ways. One last question here with respect to NFT lending. We just talked about governance. How does governance play a role in the community being able to actually pick what additional collections they want to see listed or supported via NFT lending and borrowing?
It's just like the typical conventional crypto assets that we will support. So if you want to open up a new market, you would go and raise a proposal. Let's say you want us to accept USDC, you could raise a proposal for that. It's the same for NFTs. If you want us to support a certain collection and it meets certain requirements, like it has enough volume, I mean, the requirements that we have in place are basically just bullet points that we will list, and we wouldn't even do a check. The check will be done by the community because they're voting on it effectively. So you would raise a proposal to say, let's say you want to whitelist CryptoPunks. So you would raise a proposal to whitelist that entire collection. And once it goes through, any CryptoPunk can come on board and it could be utilized. It's the same with, so this comes kind of segues into, I guess, the Cardano side of things. But if you have a certain Cardano collection, Clay Nation, let's say, right, that has decent volume, decent value, you can, once we do build the partnerships that we're working on right now, you could actually whitelist the Clay Nation and then use that card as CNFT on the platform through the partnerships that we'll be working on, which is basically two-way bridges. So governance plays a crucial part in every aspect and every collateral type that will come on Paribus.
Thank you. I think that will wrap it up there for the NFT lending and borrowing. Now, you mentioned Cardano, which I think is the perfect segue into an update on just how things are going with respect to developing and kind of making a Paribus native app here on the Cardano ecosystem. So I'm not sure if Dennis maybe want to pitch us off over to Simon from a technical standpoint, but I'd love to just kind of hear if there are any updates that you guys can share with us. I think the last time that we spoke, you guys mentioned utilizing something like Icon, which should hopefully speed up and reduce some of the costs associated with developing here on Cardano. But how are things kind of progressing on that front?
So the Icon side is kind of on hold at the moment because of Well, there's few reasons, right? We want to focus on some hot narratives that's kind of picking up volume and TVO. One of them being real world assets tokenization. Um, Most of the tokenization in real world assets right now is happening on base. So we want to kind of shift the treasury and the efforts to that aspect, because at the end of the day, as a DeFi platform, what matters is how much TVO you have and how much fee you're generating. So we want to maximize that, and that's why we started sort of pivoting towards the RWA for the last couple of months. That's ongoing. But in terms of the Cardano side, we are working with two-way bridge providers to, first of all, work on the NFT side, because NFT modules are ready. Once we partner up with the two-way bridge partner that we're in talks with, once they finalize and give us the green light, we can effectively allow Cardano-based CNFTs to come on board and be utilized on Paribus, even though Paribus itself is running on Solidity. It doesn't matter. So that's one aspect of the Cardano side we're chasing. Of course, I mean, once we generate enough fees and we generate enough TVO, then maybe there will be a proposal for us to carry on the icon development from where we left off. But as it currently stands, this is our angle to Cardano, which is CNFTs, and then we can work towards more integrated and more native version of the Paribus platform.
Perfect. I think that'll bring us to my second to last segment, which is the 2024 roadmap. So you just highlighted RWAs. I'm taking a look at the roadmap right now. You have the governance mainnet that's been achieved. We've got the NFT module on testnet that has also been achieved. There's also mentions of LP collateral hitting the mainnet, KYC implementations, RWA collateral, and then Paribus Pro. I mean, quite a bit to touch on there. Can you maybe just kind of walk us through the roadmap? You mentioned narratives and a shift right now in some of the priorities, but what about some of these other things that are listed there as well?
Yeah, so the roadmap is quite aggressive. It is packed, but it's packed for a reason, because most of the foundation work has been done. It's been ongoing for the past 12 months, so that's why we now have a great foundation to build things on top of. So the NFT side, for example, not only covers NFTs, but it also covers metaverse lands, because metaverse lands are effectively NFTs. So we can start whitelisting metaverse lands from the sand, from Decentraland, etc. in the near future. It would just be a matter of raising a proposal, getting it voted on, and then passing it through. In terms of the LP side, that's in terms of code, it's complete. It is going to go for an audit. So we're just bundling up a few features together. So we have the LPs, RWAs, and we have a couple of changes that we made that we want to bundle up and send it to Hacken for an audit collectively, rather than sending it separately, just to save time and, of course, money. So those things are in the works, and most of the code is complete. They're all going for an audit. In terms of narratives, I mean, most of the narratives that we put on the roadmap, like the RWA, we've been talking about it since probably June last year, because we saw a trend coming up, and now, even though RWAs haven't really hit that frenzy mode yet, it's getting close. I personally think it's about 6 months out before we see real RWA adoption, which of course brings us on to the KYC and Paribus Pro, which works hand in hand. Now we have the retail side of Paribus, which is for any common Web3 user. But once we start tapping into RWAs and we're talking about scale in terms of volume, in terms of TVO, then you really have to start thinking about institutions, because institutions want to come into the space, they want to generate a yield. Yeah, the interest rates are currently set at 5%, 4 to 5% at the moment, but if interest rates starts dropping, then DeFi again becomes an attractive arena for those who want to generate a passive income. And if you can generate 6 to 7% in DeFi through platforms like Paribus, through RWA, or through just liquidity provision, then why would you keep your money in the bank where it generates 2 to 3%? So we're kind of getting ready for that transition period. And all of luckily the RWA narrative worked in our favor, and we've predicted it well, and now it's a matter of releasing it and making it a reality.
Thank you for highlighting that, and I can definitely attest to just seeing more and more content and posts on Twitter and on YouTube surrounding RWAs, and also deepen. Right, I think both of those are
Yeah.
set to be pretty big narratives in the crypto space in the next 6 to 12 months, as we're all anticipating this big bull market to finally come on. I think that will take us through the end here of my personal questions. I always like to end by just giving you both a opportunity to highlight anything that you guys think might be of importance, or just giving us your closing thoughts surrounding Paribus, NFT lending and borrowing, the roadmap, governance, whatever it is that's on your mind. Go ahead and share that with us here.
So from my side, I just want to say I would really love if most of the community starts getting involved with governance, even if that means not staking, but just sort of participating in discussions in the forums, because that kind of gets people going in terms of understanding the whole flow, what it means to govern a platform. And it's not just a word that crypto projects use, governance to justify the token existence, but it's actually a thing. So I would really love if people can at least participate in the forum to keep the conversations going and come up with new ideas. Maybe you have a great idea that you can execute, raise a proposal, it might get voted in, and you may have the budget in PBX to execute your plan.
Thank you for that, Dennis. Over to you, Simon.
Yeah, well, I mean, overall, as Dennis said, I would love to have more people engaging in governance and the decision making of our protocol. Other than that, I'm really looking forward to this year, especially around RWAs. That's a huge topic and one of my favorites. I work since quite a while on tokenization of real estate, so I'm really keen on bringing that one day onto Paribus, because in my opinion, that's actually one of the real world assets that is easier to value than quite a lot of others. So yeah, looking forward for the future. Everything we have done the past years, not only in Paribus, also outside of Paribus, are all pointing in one direction. So really excited about this year and what is going to come.
Yeah, thank you both, gentlemen, for giving me some of your time here within your busy schedules. I will definitely be posting more content just surrounding governance and how the community can finally begin to pitch in, as well as just tutorials and content surrounding the NFT lending and borrowing test nets as well. Just like you guys, I've just been slammed with content and interviews over the past couple of months, and I'm finally starting to get somewhat of a break. And it's, I think, very much needed in anticipation of the bull market, where I think there's just going to be, there's so many people talking about so many different projects. So I'm going to do my best here to kind of bring Paribus back into the spotlight the best way that I can by contributing to your guys' efforts and really showcasing what you guys have built. Again, I want to thank you both here for your time, Dennis and Simon, breaking down everything going on with Paribus, the governance. We also talked about the NFT lending and borrowing, the 2024 roadmap, and just some of their focus with respect to Cardano, Arbitrum, and Base. That said, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by Dapp Central and you want more content like this surrounding all the builders in the Web3 and blockchain space, consider subscribing. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me, Simon, or Dennis surrounding Paribus or any of the Paribus aspects that we talked about as a part of today's video, then please make sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, we'll see you guys in the next video.